took an unexpected turn. In the midst of the regional conflict fears, the U.S. recently deployed one of its most formidable aircraft carriers to the Middle East. However, it doesn't stop there. To ensure the restoration of global peace, the USAF has revealed a technological marvel, an airborne aircraft carrier that operates quite differently from the regular naval vehicles. What makes this new aircraft carrier different from the rest? What are its capabilities that make it more formidable? Join us as we explore the features and abilities of the United States' new UFO aircraft carrier that is finally ready for action. A century ago, the U.S. Navy introduced the USS Langley, a unique new ship that would change military aviation forever. Often called cities at sea, aircraft carriers are massive ships that can carry up to 90 aircraft and are crewed by as many as 5,000 sailors. Measuring over 1,000 feet long, these floating air bases can project military power almost anywhere in the world. But now the landscape has shifted to a more sophisticated state as the United States Air Force reveals a UFO aircraft carrier. In the 1930s, the U.S. Navy experimented with flying aircraft carriers in the form of rigid airships, USS Akron and USS Macon. These massive dirigibles carried small F-9C2 Curtiss Sparrowhawk biplanes, which could be launched and recovered mid-air using a trapeze system. The USS Akron and USS Macon were rigid airships that took to the skies for the U.S. Navy. Built starting in 1929, these Akron-class dirigibles featured a three-keel design, giving them a stronger structure than the original German Zeppelins. Inside, 8 powerful 560-horsepower Maybach VL2 engines were housed, making maintenance easier and reducing drag during flight. The propellers, however, stayed outside the aircraft and could be tilted downward for smoother takeoffs and landings. They were more than just airships. They were flying aircraft carriers built for reconnaissance and spying missions. These massive dirigibles were designed to carry small airplanes like the F-9C2 Curtiss Sparrowhawk, which could be launched and retrieved in midair. Only 8 of these mini biplanes were made, and they were armed with .30-inch machine guns ready to extend the airship's surveillance range or attack enemies if needed. The Akron and Macon were designed to be the eyes in the sky, watching over the U.S. coastline and spotting any threats trying to enter American airspace or enemy ships getting too close to the shore. With the help of the Sparrowhawks, these airships offered a broader surveillance reach than the naval fleet could manage. Their mission was clear: protect the homeland by patrolling the coast. Inside the Akron, there was a hangar deck with a T-shaped opening measuring 75 by 60 feet, where the Sparrowhawks were launched and retrieved. The planes hung from the airship on a trapeze-like device, and it took a highly skilled pilot to guide the plane's hook onto the trapeze for recovery. As described by the National Air and Space Museum, the pilot had to carefully maneuver the plane to connect with the trapeze's horizontal bar. Once hooked, the engine was shut off, and the plane was lifted into the airship's belly and stored on special racks. Despite its innovative design, the Akron faced a series of deadly accidents during its brief time in service. In 1932, 2 sailors lost their lives in a mooring incident, and another accident occurred near a hangar. At the time, the Akron and Macon seemed like promising innovations, though the Navy knew that these airships needed to stay behind the front lines and rely on their reconnaissance planes to scout the coast. Flying ahead would have made them easy targets for enemy aircraft. Yet, despite the dangers, the Akron-class aircraft achieved something remarkable with their ability to launch and recover planes mid-air. Today, the wreckage of the Akron lies at the bottom of the ocean near Atlantic City. But that wasn't the end for airborne aircraft carriers. Away from the attempts of the 1900s, the U.S. has relatively recently been looking into a new flying carrier program. For instance, the C-130 Hercules. The Lockheed C-130 Hercules is an American military transport plane with 4 turboprop engines made by Lockheed. It can take off and land on rough runways and was initially designed to carry troops, medical patients, and cargo. Over time, the C-130 has been adapted for many different roles, such as a gunship for airborne assaults, search and rescue, scientific support, weather monitoring, aerial refueling, maritime patrol, and fighting fires from the air. It is the main tactical transport plane for many armed forces around the world, with over 40 different versions, including civilian ones known as the Lockheed L-100, used in more than 60 countries. This transport aircraft started service with the U.S. in 1956 and was soon used by Australia and other countries. It has been involved in many military, civilian, and humanitarian missions. In 2007, it became the fifth aircraft to serve for 50 years with its first customer, the U.S. Air Force. It holds the record for the longest production run of any military aircraft, with the latest model, the Lockheed Martin C-130J Super Hercules, still being produced as of 2023. Since 2015, the United States Defense Advanced Research Projects Agency, or DARPA, has been investigating the prospect of using a modified Lockheed C-130 Hercules cargo aircraft to deploy and support Dynetics X-61 Gremlin's unmanned aerial vehicles as microfighters. Upon completing their missions, these microfighters are recovered using a proprietary air recovery method involving a drogue-like receptacle and docking technique. Testing is currently being conducted at Dugway Proving Ground, with International Air Response providing the contracted C-130A. In January of 2023, one of these tests saw DARPA successfully launch an X-61 Gremlin UAV from the bay of the C-130. Should the test get the check mark and see the aircraft carrier officially launched, it would enable the U.S. to deploy drones from motherships while still outside of enemy air defenses, allowing the drones to go on and engage targets before returning to the airspace around the mothership to be recaptured and carried home for service or repairs. However, the tests aren't all rosy, as despite a test showing that the drone could in fact be deployed by the C-130, the drone itself would be ultimately destroyed after an hour and a half of flight that ended in a parachute failure. But that's likely an easy fix that would be prevented in subsequent tests. With that setback out of the way, the program would continue as planned, facilitate the rise of other similar programs, and ultimately give the U.S. the power of a supercarrier in the sky to complement an already powerful fleet of aircraft carriers. The 1970s came with the U.S. Air Force experimented with the idea of converting one of its large aircraft into a flying aircraft carrier full of fighters that could be deployed and even recovered in midair. Among the contenders for this role were the Lockheed C-5 Galaxy and the Boeing 747. Boeing took the lead when they correctly pointed out in their proposal that the 747 offered superior range and endurance when flying with a full payload of an impressive 883,000 pounds. The 747 would therefore be able to carry up to 10 microfighters at a time. He specially designed and built the microfighters to be small enough to be housed within the 747, along with an apparatus that would allow the large plane to carry the fighters a long distance, drop them where they were needed to fight, recover them once again, and refuel them if need be. However, some uncertainties surfaced, from the fuel range to how well the Boeing microfighters would fare against the advanced threats they were supposed to square off with. Ultimately, the proposal never made it off the page of Boeing's report, but the report did establish that despite the challenges, the concept, although likely costly, was actually technically feasible. Then came the nuclear-powered Lockheed CL-1201. This project was a design project for an enormous nuclear-powered aircraft with a wingspan of 1,120 feet. If it had been built, it would have had the largest wingspan ever for an aircraft, more than double that of any aircraft from the 20th century. Lockheed, in staying true to their nature of pushing the limits, decided to go at flying aircraft the size of a traditional aircraft carrier. This aircraft, or aircraft carrier, weighs a literal groundbreaking 5,265 tons and stands as tall as a 14-story building. To get such a massive structure to fly, the design included a 1,120-foot wingspan with a 560-foot-long fuselage. That's the length of 2.5 Boeing 747s end-to-end. This aircraft carrier could, however, surprisingly be powered by only 4 huge turbofan engines powered by regular jet fuel to an altitude under 16,000 feet. At this point, the nuclear energy from an onboard reactor takes over and powers the jet for 41 days straight without refueling or having to land for a second. In fact, the aircraft could maintain a Mach 0.8 cruising speed for this period and fly at around 30,000 feet up. This massive aircraft would have a crew of 845, be able to deploy 2020 multi-role fighters, maintain a hangar bay for repairs, but would also likely cost billions of dollars and far too many labor hours to produce and maintain, which must have contributed to why the aircraft never made it past the proposal stage. But its concept to this day stands as a historical anomaly that continues to inspire renewed attention from the world. The B-36 Peacemaker strategic bomber was another aircraft intended to be upgraded to carry microfighters. In the 1950s, it was designed to act as a flying aircraft carrier that could carry up to 4 McDonnell F-85 Goblin fighter planes on board. The Convair B-36 Peacemaker was a huge strategic bomber used by the United States Air Force from 1946 to 1959. Built by Convair, it holds the record as the largest mass-produced aircraft with piston engines, though a single Hughes Hercules was larger in span and weight. The B-36 also boasts the longest wingspan of any combat plane and could fly across continents without needing to refuel. The B-36 entered service in 1948 and was the main aircraft for delivering nuclear weapons for the Strategic Air Command until it was replaced by the Boeing B-52 Stratofortress in 1955. Most of the B-36 were scrapped, leaving only 4. Its development began before the U.S. entered World War II, driven by the need for a bomber that could reach Europe and return to North America. The initial request for the bomber called for a top speed of 450 miles per hour, a cruising speed of 275 miles per hour, and a range of 12,000 miles. Although these specs were too advanced for the technology of the time, the requirements were later adjusted to a range of 10,000 miles, a combat radius of 4,000 miles, a cruising speed of 240 to 300 miles per hour, and a service ceiling of 40,000 feet. The adjustments aimed to make the bomber effective against the anti-aircraft defenses of Nazi Germany. In the Pacific, the U.S. Army Air Forces needed a bomber that could fly from Hawaii to Japan, making the B-36 a top priority. On July 23, 1943, after seeing German plans for a similar bomber, and as the German Heinkel firm started work on their own 6-engine bomber, Secretary of War Henry L. Stimson and high-ranking officers decided to skip usual military procurement steps. The USAF quickly placed an order for 100 B-36 bombers with Convair, even before the prototypes had finished testing. The first plane was expected in August 1945, and the last by October 1945. But delivery was delayed. The B-36 was revealed in August 1945 and made its first flight in August 1946. When the Cold War began, American military leaders needed bombers that could carry large atomic bombs. The B-36 was the only American aircraft with the range and capacity to transport these bombs from the U.S. to the Soviet Union. A special modification, called the Grand Slam installation, allowed it to carry bigger bombs. However, the B-36 was quickly outdated with the introduction of faster jet fighters. The B-47 Stratojet, its jet-powered counterpart, didn't become fully operational until 1953 and needed aerial refueling to reach the Soviet Union. The B-29 and B-50 bombers also had limited range. It wasn't until the Boeing B-52 Stratofortress was ready in 1955 that the B-36 was replaced as the primary nuclear bomber for the Strategic Air Command. The B-36 was known as the Aluminium Overcast and was central to SAC during General Curtis LeMay's leadership. It could carry more payload than the B-29 or B-52 and could fly missions up to 3,400 miles away, staying airborne for up to 4 hours. Its large wings and 6 engines allowed it to fly at high altitudes, avoiding most enemy fighters and anti-aircraft guns. To launch its microfighters would be the McDonnell F-85 Goblin, and it would house up to 4 of them. The B-36 was the ideal pick this time in the 1950s, thanks to its massive size and weight. Its 230-foot wings would dwarf even those of the B-52 Stratofortress and cement the B-36 as one of the largest aircraft to ever take to the skies. Its weight comes in at an astonishing 410,000 pounds when fully loaded with fuel and up to 86,000 pounds of weapons. Despite all of these bragging rights, the B-36 would never fly in an operational mission, as although it was desired to give the U.S. the capability of bombing Berlin efficiently, World War II would have ended by the time it was ready. However, its massive size and range prompted the Air Force to consider its use as a flying aircraft carrier. But that too would not come to fruition, as the advent of mid-air refueling dramatically increased the operational range of all varieties of aircraft and ultimately undermined the importance of the range of the B-36 Peacemaker. However, since the development of an airborne aircraft carrier appeared futile, the focus has been on making the U.S. Navy more formidable, and this sector has experienced impressive progress, thanks to technological advancements. A proof of this technological change is the USS Gerald. The USS Gerald R. Ford class is the largest aircraft carrier in the world, with a displacement of 100,000 tons. The U.S. Navy signed a $5 billion contract with Northrop Grumman in 2008 to design and build the aircraft carrier. Launched in 2009, the USS Gerald R. Ford has made its impact felt in the world, not only because it is a new generation aircraft carrier, but because it was built with a need in mind, and that need was to strengthen the United States Navy. Anyone familiar with the United States' military sector would definitely know that the nation doesn't joke around with its defense systems, and regardless of the amount they would spend building them, they wanted the aircraft carrier to be perfect. And just as you imagine, this ship is the definition of perfection. The aircraft carrier was designed and built by one of the best industries, Huntington Ingalls Industries, which is the only nuclear ship manufacturer in the United States. This aircraft carrier is a nuclear ship, and it is equipped with 2 nuclear reactors weighing over 1,000 tons each. They allow the ship to serve for a very long time, as the developers themselves say. This aircraft would be operational for over 50 years. Here's what makes this aircraft carrier one of the most advanced in the world. The USS Gerald Ford is powered by 2 state-of-the-art Bechtel A-1B nuclear reactors, the most advanced engines made for naval ships. Thanks to these reactors, the carrier can go 25 years without needing to refuel and only requires a single refueling over its entire 50-year life. With a top speed of around 30 knots, it can swiftly navigate to any part of the globe, ready to support allies or confront foes. Equipped with the latest technology, the USS Ford features cutting-edge sensors, processors, and weapon systems. Unlike most carriers, it boasts the AN/Spy-3 radar, which combines horizon and volume search capabilities into one advanced system. This radar is incredibly versatile, handling everything from surveillance and air traffic control to missile communications and detecting targets from great distances. This radar, called dual-band radar, was designed by Raytheon for both the Zumwalt-class destroyers and the Gerald R. Ford-class aircraft carriers. By using a single radar with 6 sides instead of 6 to 10 separate ones, the control tower can be smaller. The DBR works by combining 2 types of radar, the X-band N/Spy-3 for multifunction and the S-band N/Spy-4 for volume search. These radars are divided into 3 groups and can scan different areas simultaneously. Later, the S-band radar was removed from the Zumwalt-class destroyers to save money. The 3 sides of the radar dedicated to the X-band deal with tracking things flying low and sending out radar signals, while the other 3 sides, which use the S-band, search for and track targets no matter the weather. This radar system, called the dual-band radar, is the first to operate on 2 different frequencies at the same time, all controlled by one system. The carrier can house up to 75 fighter jets and unmanned aerial vehicles, including the highly advanced F-35C Lightning II Joint Strike Fighter. This 5th-generation jet is the result of the Pentagon's most costly weapons program, costing about $400 billion. It's incredibly versatile, capable of close air support, vertical takeoff and landing, and more, making it the Navy's top choice. Plus, the USS Ford is ready for the future, equipped to host, launch, and recover the next generation of aircraft, like the 6th-generation F/AXX fighter. Thanks for watching. While you are still here, click on the link appearing on your screen to check out another of our videos. See you there!